Welcome to this short mini lecture on the gross anatomy of the liver. This particular lecture will cover the surfaces of the liver, the ligaments of the liver, the lobes of the liver, and finally any other features of importance. So, what is the liver? Well, it's an unpaired accessory digestive gland within the abdominal cavity. It's the largest and the heaviest abdominal gland, and it weighs approximately 1.4 to 1.7 kilograms. It is located both within the right hypochondriac region, moving across into the epigastric, and then the left lobe even extends to the left hypochondriac region. In terms of the surfaces, let's first look at the front surface. So this is the anterior aspect, this is the posterior. You can see this structure running through the back, that's the inferior vena cava. So swinging the liver around to the front, how it would be sitting in our abdomen. We've got the superior and anterior surface. This is all known as the diaphragmatic surface. When you turn it around like so, which you can see on the board here, the IVC here, the gallbladder sitting down here, and across is the right lobe of the liver, which you can see at the front here, separated by this ligament, and comes all the way around to fill up this part of the liver. This is the right lobe, and this whole surface that we can see here is the visceral surface. Coming across to this area, this is the left lobe. Before I break it up into the two other lobes, because there are four lobes in altogether, the right, the left, the right, the left, but we also have the quadrate and the caudate lobe of importance. However, before we continue on, I want to just quickly go through some development of the liver. So if we can move to this picture, what we have here is in the developing fetus, we have a gut tube that goes from your mouth all the way through to the anus. That gut tube is broken into three sections. We have the foregut, the midgut, and the hindgut. Now, looking at this particular structure, what we have is just the gut, like a big long tube in the developing fetus. The tube comes through this red structure here, which is going to be the diaphragm, but in the fetus it's called the septum transversum. At the front of the body, which would be here, is the anterior abdominal wall. Now, coming off the foregut, which would be this part here, is this piece of mesentery, the ventral mesentery, that goes from the front gut tube all the way to the anterior abdominal wall. Okay, that's a sheet of mesentery called the ventral mesentery. Now, what happens in the foregut, what herniates off the front is this liver outbud. And this liver grows off into the septum transversum. And essentially, this is where the liver will start to form. It will grow up through this ventral mesentery up into the septum transversum, or up into the diaphragm. It will also get another secondary bud off here, which will come down and come off like this. And this will be the gallbladder. Okay? Now, as this grows and gets bigger and bigger and bigger, it takes up most of the space of that ventral mesentery. But the remnants that is left is this ligament here. So that's where the liver's growing like so. There's the anterior abdominal wall, like so. And where that ventral mesentery once was, is this area here, which is the falciform ligament. Now, coming from the mother, or the mother's placenta, is the veins coming in to bring oxygenated blood to the body. But because the blood is already oxygenated, it doesn't really need to do much in the liver. So it will come in through the left umbilical vein and enter in like so. So this is the umbilicus, like so, and it comes in through into the liver, which would be coming into the back here. So it would be, if you spun it around, this particular left umbilical vein would actually come up through here, like so. Now, when you are born, okay, obviously we don't have any need for this anymore, and so this just becomes a ligament. Okay, so all that area there just becomes a ligament, which is in the lower section, in the lesser part of the falciform ligament. And that, if you spin it around, you can see it there like so. And that would be that region there. And that's what we call the round ligament. And round in Latin is teres, so it's the teres ligament. And that's on the lower margin of the falciform ligament. Now, because the liver grew up mostly into the diaphragm, there are certain segments, so where we have the mesentery coming up, and it comes around the side, like so. So if you spin it around, it comes out to a triangular point on the left and a triangular point on the right. Now, where there are areas where there is no mesentery or peritoneum, which would be like here and all over the front surface, we have an area that's called the bare area. And that would be also there. The bare area, that's intimately contacted with the diaphragm, and that's where it grew up into the particular diaphragm. So those regions there, and also at this region here, and kind of where the gallbladder sits, which we saw it come out from that herniation, that's the only other area where there's no peritoneum. All the rest of the liver will have peritoneum all over it. Now, spinning around, we now go to the visceral surface. So what we can see is that's the teres ligament, and that will have a continuation up into this area here, which we call the portal hepatis. The portal hepatis is the hilum of the liver. Hilum means the doorway, because what we have here is we have two main structures that are going in and one structure coming out. And the structure going out is essentially the bile coming out, and the structures going in, amongst others, but the main ones are the arteries going in and the portal vein going in. And so this is what we call the hilum of the liver, or the portal hepatis. So where we have this margin coming up, this is still in the right lobe, okay? Where we have this teres ligament coming up that continues up into here, that now, with that area that seals off from the gallbladder, gives you a new lobe of the liver called the quadrate lobe, okay? Now, when this vessel came in, as we spoke about, that is oxygenated blood from the mother. So it's got nutrients in it and it has a higher level of oxygen. So we don't need to really put it through the liver for processing. So what the liver has is a particular shunt to put it through into the IVC, which we can't really illustrate here, but this is kind of in this area here, and that would kind of divert the blood into the IVC. That shunt is called the ductus venosus, okay, which is one of those shunts that we see in the fetal circulation. Now, once we are born, that becomes a ligament, and so that region there is called the ligamental venosum, and that's on the outer margin, okay, of the right lobe of the liver into the left lobe, okay, and then we have this other reflection of peritoneum there, and that's what's going to give you the caudate lobe. And so this region is the caudate lobe. So now, in terms of the lobes, we have four main anatomical lobes. We have the right, the left, spinning around, the right, the left, okay. However, we have two further lobes, the quadrate and the caudate lobe, which is kind of parts of the right lobe, but they give a further division. Now, surgically, they might give another, or a total of 8 lobes, but in terms of anatomy, we'll just stay with 4. Finally, let's have a look at the portal hepatis region. So this is a region where we have structures going in, structures coming out. Now, because the foregut was that area where that particular herniation came out to develop the liver, the foregut is always, so all the structures from the foregut is always supplied by the celiac trunk from the aorta, whereas the midgut is supplied by the superior mesenteric artery, another branch from the abdominal aorta. So you can assume that because the liver came off the foregut, that the blood vessel to the liver will be completely branches from the celiac trunk, which is going to be the hepatic proper artery. And this is going to be the blood vessels going in. So this is bringing oxygenated blood into the liver for all the nutrients and all the oxygen for the hepatocytes. Now, in terms of the portal vein, the portal the portal vein drains all of the gut tube, all the way down to the distal third, so it doesn't drain the distal third of the anus, but it will drain everything else all the way up to the esophagus. So all of that blood coming from the gut tube will come in through the portal vein for processing in the liver. So we get 1/3 of blood through the hepatic arteries and 2/3 of blood for the portal vein. Once it's all been processed, then the liver will put the blood back into the IVC, which will go through the diaphragm and then up into the heart. So finally, what we'll finish off is just the gallbladder region. And so because we had the liver and we had a branch coming off the liver, which was the gallbladder, the liver drains itself in terms of the bile through the left and the right hepatic duct. Collectively, they come together as one, which gives you the common hepatic duct, and that will join the cystic duct, which is the drainage of the gallbladder. And together, they will form the common bile duct. And that's going to come down and drain into this region here, which is going to be in the duodenum. And so this area where it drains into the duodenum is called the major papillary duct. And that's where all the bile is going to be dropped off in here. So you can assume now, at that point of entry where the common bile duct drops off, is going to be the demarcation point between the foregut and the midgut, which is very important to know anatomically. So finally, on the visceral surface, we have certain features that you should be aware of. We have an impression over here because it's sitting over on the left hypogastric region, hypochondrial region, should I say. And that's going to be the stomach will be sitting there. You'll have the esophagus sitting over here. Here you're going to have the ascending colon coming up and then flexing or turning into the transverse. So that's going to be the hepatic flexure there and coming across to the transverse. So the transverse will have an impression there, the colon will have an impression there, and here we'll have the impression of the kidney. And so that's really the liver in a nutshell. What we've covered is the surfaces, which is the diaphragmatic and the visceral surfaces. We've seen the ligaments, we've seen the falciform at the front. Coming up from the back is the teres, which is that obliterated ligament of the umbilical vein. We have going around the left triangular, the right triangular, all the bare area, and then you've got this region here, which is the ligamental venosus, and then we have the lobes being the right, the left, the quadrate, and the caudate, and then the features being the hepatoportus with the portal vein, the hepatic artery, and the bile system, and then finally how it kind of developed in the fetus.